Hi guys, and welcome to my kitchen. Today I am going to be showing you one of my absolute favorite lunch recipes, and this is a shrimp scampi but with zucchini. Now you can use zucchini noodles for this, but you'll see what I'm going to do is actually just slice my zucchini. I find that it's a lot easier that way because I don't have a spiralizer, and if I buy zucchini noodles, I tend to find they're a bit watery because that is kind of one of the things with zucchini is it tends to be watery. So I just do it this way, and I really like this recipe, so let's get started. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is get my shrimp cooking. So I've got just a small saucepan here with some water, and I'm going to add some salt to that. And then I'm going to add about a pound of frozen shrimp. Now I used the extra large variety, but you can use any size here. That part doesn't really matter. The only thing that I would preference is it is going to be best to cook your shrimp from raw as opposed to buying the pre-cooked ones because the flavor's just a little bit better. Now for my zucchini, I've showed you this before, but what I like to do is just take a little strip off the bottom there because that will sturdy my zucchini on the cutting board, and then I can work a little bit more easy with it. So I'm just cutting it into thin strips here, as thin as I can get it. And then what I'm going to do is I will cut those strips in half again lengthwise, and then cut them in half again the shortwise so that they fit in my jar a little bit better. And I used about 2, I would say average size zucchinis for 3 jars. Of course, it's going to depend on the size of your zucchini. Now I'm going to add some butter. So we're going to do about 2 tablespoons of butter per each jar. Now, you can melt this down ahead of time, but since this is a meal prep application and we're going to be microwaving this when we make it anyway, I figure you might as well just put the butter in there. When your shrimp is finished cooking, you'll know because they're nice and pink. You want to just take them out of the hot water and put them straight into either cold water or an ice bath to stop the cooking process. Meanwhile, I am chopping up about 8 garlic cloves here, and I'm just going to divide that between my 3 jars, sorry. You want this to be very garlicky, unless you're sensitive to garlic. If you are sensitive to garlic, you can just replace this with some garlic powder or just omit it completely. So again, just gonna go ahead and split that up between my 3 jars here. And then what we wanna do is go ahead and get some seasoning in here. Seasoning is really simple on this one. We're just gonna do some salt, pepper, and parsley. Now I used between 1/4 and 1/2 teaspoon of salt per jar. My butter is unsalted, so if you're using salted butter, I would go with 1/4 teaspoon, no more than that. And then about 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, and then about 1/2 teaspoon of parsley. Again, that is per jar. And then I'm going to move on to getting my shrimp ready to go into the jar. You can put them in whole or you can cut them up if you want. I like to cut mine up because I'm using the bigger shrimp. If your shrimp still has the tail on it, all you need to do to get the most meat is just kind of squeeze that tail portion and then pull it off, and you should have all of the meat from your shrimp there. So I cut these up into about 3 sections per shrimp and just divided between my 3 jars. The very last thing that I'm going to do here is put some lemon in the jar. Now, I did not want to add the lemon peel, lemon rind into the jar in this instance, so I just kind of cut that off, and then you're left with pretty much just the lemon flesh. And I just divided this 1 lemon, kind of, cut it up into smaller chunks and divided that amongst my 3 jars. And it works really well. You can just kind of leave it in the jar. You don't really have to squeeze it or anything. You can just leave it in the jar when you microwave it. And this is what they look like when they're done. I'm just gonna put a lid on these and put them in the fridge. Okay, so it is Monday afternoon and it's time for lunch. So this is what my jar looks like. You can see I've got a little bit of water at the bottom there, but that is actually okay. It's good to have a little bit of liquid in here. So I'm gonna just take the top off of this and pop this in my microwave for about 3 minutes. Now it might be a little bit different depending on your microwave, but basically after the 3 minutes, I'm gonna go ahead and put the lid back on just so it's retaining that heat. I'm gonna let it sit for about another 2 minutes, and then I am ready to have lunch. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more.